Hey everyone, welcome to Danny Chats. This is episode number 28, and today I'm joined by Denise. Denise is from California. She's had a heart transplant. She set up Heartfelt Help Foundation, which we'll find out a bit more about soon, and she's also an ambassador for Lifebulb, which I think she's going to tell us about too. So, how are you, Denise?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. So, you're a busy person then?
I try. I think as you know, after you get a transplant, you don't want to waste time.
Yes.
Um, I think you realize how precious a gift time is, and when you're chronically ill, even though you've had a transplant and you're not fixed, and so you don't take time for granted, and you want to leave a legacy that lasts past you. You're doing that with Danny Chats. You're doing that right here. You're leaving a
Yeah.
legacy, and so I think that's what we all try to do in our own little space.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, and that's how I feel. So, how did you come to have a heart transplant?
Um, I it's funny. I can say kind of honestly that I don't really know,
Yeah.
uh, because I was diagnosed with postpartum cardiomyopathy when I had my son, um, more years ago than I want to say out loud. and but when I actually had my heart transplant, I donated my native heart to science, and the one thing that we learned from the initial look-see at my old heart was that there was probably something genetic going on that just never got diagnosed, which makes complete sense to me because everyone on my father's side of the family had heart disease and died very young of heart failure. And so that makes sense to me that
Yeah,
I was probably sick from birth, but didn't realize it until I got a diagnosis when I was in my 20s.
yeah, wow. So you say it was when you had your son. So did you have your son and then come out of hospital, or was it literally like you had him and then the heart problems kept you in hospital?
Actually, neither. Well, I was diagnosed in the hospital. My father-in-law, who just passed away in January, he was a uh, liver specialist doctor,
Oh, wow.
and he came in to meet his new grandson, and I had an emergency C-section, so I was still hooked up to an EKG monitor, which was literally the first time I'd ever had an EKG in my life.
Yeah.
And he looked at the monitor as a physician and actually called doctors and nurses in and pointed at my EKG and said, "That's not right.
Wow.
That something's wrong there. You need to have her looked at by a cardiologist." And so they brought in a cardiologist that was on staff at the hospital. And that's when I got my diagnosis, and I was sent home because I was stable,
Yeah.
with instructions to go see a cardiologist, within a few months after leaving the hospital. So it wasn't anything that was like an emergency at the time, but if it weren't for my father-in-law, I probably would not have been diagnosed, and I probably would not be here today.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I was going to say, I mean, it could have ended very badly if without that
Yeah.
diagnosis.
Yeah. My father-in-law literally saved my life that day. I didn't really realize it until I had to have a transplant. And I realized that without that initial diagnosis from him, um, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. So, I mean, even at that time, I suppose when he said to you that it doesn't look right and you were having these checks, I bet transplant wasn't on your mind still.
Not even a little bit. Even when the doctors started bandying the word around, started to say, "Oh, this ends in a transplant."
Yeah.
I I never paid attention to it, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I heard the words. I can tell you that I was told my disease ends in a transplant, your disease ends in a transplant multiple times. But I I was working, I had a kid to raise, um, I had a life to live. I figured that would happen. Don't we all think, oh, that's going to happen to somebody else? That's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And you just don't. At least I didn't. Um, although I am the queen of stuffer, so I can stuff anything. But I just, my way of dealing with it was not. I didn't even pay attention to it until it became impossible to not pay attention to. I mean, even when I had a pacemaker and ICD implanted, pacemaker and defibrillator implanted, I didn't pay attention to that either.
Yeah.
I just went along with life and assumed that, again, the transplant would happen to somebody else, not me.
Yeah, that's what was going to be my next question was, did you have the ECG and everything put in? So you did.
Yeah.
And how long was you using that for?
I had that for about 15 years.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't sort of like immediately after you found out, this heart disease. It wasn't like, a few months down the line you was having a heart transplant. It was
Nope.
quite a long time that
I had it for years. And had it replaced 3 times. One of them was a recall, which was hysterical because you think a person getting recalled, but I got recalled. And so I had it replaced 3 times. It started to go off more and more. It never went off for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, again, towards the end, I started to get more and more shocks.
Yeah.
And then in December of 2017, my cardiologist sat me down and said, "You have about a year left without a transplant.
Wow.
We can't do anything more medically for you, and it's either transplant or, that's going to be it."
Yeah.
And that's probably the first time that I actually thought, oh, this is actually gonna happen to me. It's
Yeah.
not gonna happen to somebody else. It's gonna happen to me. And within 2 weeks of that, I was in hospital with a ventricular tachycardia attack, and told that I wasn't going to be. I was too weak to be discharged until I got a transplant. So I was going to be a resident. I was going to be a resident of the hospital until I got a transplant.
Wow.
And luckily, 3 weeks after that, a surgeon walked into my room and said, "We have a new heart for you."
Yeah, that's very similar to my story in the fact when I was younger, I was diagnosed with a liver disease at about 14, and they said to me at the time that their preferred option would have been a liver transplant, but they said you can try medication, and being that young, I was like, I don't want a liver transplant, I want to try it. And it worked for me for up until I was 30 something. So kind of like you, I was just getting on with my life. I didn't really think about it. I was like, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to need this liver transplant. And then, I went for my annual checkup, and I'd been deteriorating, but I didn't really put it all together myself. And then, all of a sudden, I was sat in the office, and they said, "Now we think it's the time for your transplant." And that was real.
You're like, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
It is one of those things where when you stuff things, you just kind of bury it until you can't bury it anymore, and then you have to come face to face with it. So that's what happened.
So you were in hospital for a while. You got the transplant that you desperately needed, and how was the recovery for you?
Oh, the recovery sucked. It was
Yeah.
it was pretty rough. I had both types of organ rejection and an infection. I actually had 3 open heart surgeries in the span of a week.
Oh, wow.
The third one almost killed me. It was something. I spent about 3 months in hospital after. I spent more time post-transplant in the hospital than I did pre.
Yeah.
And finally got to come home. I was transplanted in January of 2018 and finally got to come home in April.
Wow, 4 months.
Yeah, and then came home with a open wound on my chest and having to have antibiotics injected into me 3 times a day.
Wow.
Which was, again, something. My poor husband, who used to be super queasy about needles, is not anymore.
No, you worked that out of him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to. But once recovery started, it was just amazing because walking up a flight of stairs, used to, exhaust me. And I used to just kind of pile everything at the bottom of the stairs because I thought I can only make one trip up a day. And so I'm going to make that trip count. And in fact, my husband and I went on a 11-mile hike yesterday, which was fantastic. And there was one like real gradual uphill part of the hike that we went on, and I stood at the bottom of it even yesterday, and here we're 3 years out, and I said, every time I see one of these hills, I remember how panicked I used to be about, because we always loved to hike, but it was always much shorter when I was pre-transplant. And I just, every time I remember how panicked I used to be when I'd get at the bottom of one of these super gradual hills that would not even phase anybody normal. It doesn't phase me at all anymore. But that thought of having to do that gradual uphill climb, I would just get panicky about it because I think I'm not going to make it. There's no way I can make it. And I'd have to stop halfway up to catch my breath. And now, 11 miles and it's easy. So even now I get a little teary about what I can accomplish now that I could never even think about accomplishing back then.
Yeah, again, I can totally relate to that because I was doing a blog and I was going through some old photos I had saved on my laptop. And it was when I came out of hospital and I was doing sort of 300 steps a day, and that was good. And there was a small bit of field out the back of my house, and I remember every single day just sort of taking a little walk and then just gradually going more and more. And then this week I ran five kilometers every night for 5 nights. And I did 3 in a row, and then I thought, well, I might as well do 5 just because I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it fantastic? And I know, I talk to friends who are healthy. I'm sure you have too. And I'm so excited about, I try and do a 5K every day too. And I talk to friends about accomplishing that, and they're like doing half marathons, and they're thinking like, big deal. I'm like, yeah, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive for yourself, like you say. I mean, and at the time when you're going through that healing process, it seems like it's going, taking forever. But then when you do look back, you're like, wow, 2 years ago that was for me, and here I am.
Yeah, it's as with most everything in life, when you're in the thick of it, it feels like you're in the muck and just kind of trying to walk through the muck, and it takes forever to get through. But then you look back and think, oh, I got through that. I could get through that. It wasn't fun. Nobody's ever going to look back on that and say, oh yeah, I'd do that again. But you can do it. And it just shows how resilient people are and how strong people are.
Yeah.
And they can do more than they think they can.
Yeah, and I think that kind of links back to what we were saying at the beginning about, wanting to do more and stuff. I think when you've survived that, you're like, pretty much I can take on anything. Like I did that and I won, and I'm here. So anything else now is fairly easy. And and I've learned now, if you take on a task, like a job or something, and it doesn't go right, it's not the end of the world. I think before I had fear to do things, if that makes sense, and then now it's like, well, I'll just try everything. If it, what can go wrong?
We'll try everything. Yeah, I'm still. For me, I had a little bit of neurological damage from the surgeries, and that affected my balance.
Yeah.
So but even then, I'm like, bring it on. I'll try it. If I fall down, fall down.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many things that I want to try that I haven't tried yet, and everything's, well, not jumping out of a plane, but everything else is on my bucket list.
I've done a skydive. I did one a few years back. It's good.
Yeah, I've watched people do them. I'm very excited for them. I've got no desire to do that.
No, I must admit, when I did a tandem jump, and what they do is they strap you to the front of somebody, and then they sit on the edge of the plane and they hang you out the plane. And at that time, I just thought, what have you done? What have you done? This is the biggest mistake of your life, And then luckily it was all right.
Yeah. There's just so many things that I'd love to try that just feel so fun to me. But nature is the best, and
Yeah.
I love getting out. I live in Northern California, and it's just beautiful here. And and getting out and hiking the coast, and we did 11 miles yesterday.
Yeah. Do you
That
have
started.
dogs?
I don't. It's
No.
a very sad thing. We have. I've always had dogs growing
Uh,
up, but and right before my transplant, our last one passed away,
uh,
and we just haven't gotten another one. All the dogs we've ever had have kind of come to us,
yeah,
and
yeah,
somebody said somebody's had to move or something's happened, and this dog has just kind of landed in our lap. So
yeah,
we're just kind of figuring that the next one will land in our lap sometime.
yeah. I think it's nice like that. That's how I kind of got my dog. That's how I've had all my pets as well, actually. Cats and dogs
Yeah,
have just, like you say,
yeah,
people have had to move. They're like, "Can you take this?" You're like, "Yeah, I suppose so."
yeah. That's exactly how we've gotten every dog I've ever had since I was a tiny person, and I just figured that's how animals come to me. Is they just come to me when the timing is right, and so they will. We
Yeah,
will have another
definitely.
dog again.
Yeah, I think that's like most things in life. They come to you when you're ready.
Yep.
So tell me a bit about Heartfelt Help Foundation, which you have set up.
Yes. One of the ways that I knew I wanted to give back to the community and do something that left a legacy not only for me but for my donor too. Which I don't know who. I know he's a male, but I don't know who he was. I've we've I've written multiple letters, but I haven't ever heard back from the family, which I totally understand. I
Yeah,
mean, they're grieving a loss that is hard for them. So I completely understand. If they ever want to write me, that would be great. Um, but if they don't, that's okay too. But I wanted to leave a legacy for the both of us, and fill a need. And I started working with our local organ procurement organization, which is the organization that facilitates between donors and hospitals.
yeah,
Um, and that was great. And I still volunteer with them a lot. But I wanted to do something more, and I just couldn't figure out where that was, until one day I was in clinic, actually, at a doctor's appointment, and the social worker that is works with our or worked with our transplant team was retiring, and the last day happened to coincide with my doctor's appointment. So I popped into her office to wish her well and thank her, and happened in on a conversation about a patient that was currently in hospital waiting for their transplant, and their transplant was going to be delayed because they couldn't afford the post transplant housing. You have to relocate here in the States because we have private health insurance, and actually I think it would be the same if we had universal care insurance too.
yeah,
You have to if you don't live within 20 or 30 minutes of your transplant facility, you have to relocate to within that distance,
yeah,
for at least a month after transplant, and usually more like 3 months. So the doctors can monitor you. You're going back in for biopsies and tests and blood work and labs and
yeah,
all the things, post transplant. And the vast majority of insurance policies don't cover that. It's considered non-medical, even though it's medically required. So that can cost, in the San Francisco Bay Area, we paid $4,000 a month for that. Actually,
yeah,
we paid more than $4,000 a month for that housing. And if you're fortunate enough that you can afford that, we had friends that did fundraisers for us, and we had friends that gifted us with some money to help with that.
yeah,
Um, but if you're not fortunate enough to have that, your transplant can be delayed
yeah,
here because they're not going to invest. And from their perspective, they're not going to invest what they have to invest in you as a patient if they don't know that you can kind of hold up your end of the bargain. You don't have a caregiver that's willing to stay
yeah,
with you. You don't have the funds to pay for what insurance doesn't. You don't pass the psychosocial exams. I'm sure that's the same in England too. Yeah.
It's very similar in terms of the exams and everything, but I lived an hour and just over an hour away from my hospital in London. And like you say, I had to go back first every 2 weeks, and then it went to 4 weeks, I think, and then 8 weeks. But for the first few months of that, because they didn't want me getting on public transport, they sent someone out to pick me up every 2 weeks. A hospital, like an ambulance, private ambulance driver, and they come and pick you up. And to be honest, I built up a brilliant relationship with her. She was into food like I was. So every time I went into the hospital, she went to this shop round the corner and bought us food to eat on the way home. So
Oh my
yeah, I
God.
mean that's the NHS
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, that does not happen here.
We have no
Um,
worries.
and then the other complication for Northern California is that the transplant, well, two of the major transplant hospitals are in San Francisco. And if you can picture San Francisco is a peninsula.
Yeah,
So it's attached to the rest of the Bay Area via bridges,
yeah,
Golden Gate Bridge, the Bay Bridge. Um, and so the other condition is that you have to be within 20 or 30 minutes of your transplant facility. You also can't cross a bridge because we have these things called earthquakes in Northern
yeah,
California.
yeah. Oh
And
wow,
and
so they plan.
earthquakes can drop a bridge,
Yeah,
and so they don't want you across a bridge. So my house is 2 hours north of my transplant hospital and across a bridge. So I could not go home after I was too far away for me to go home. And that's true of a lot of people is sometimes you can be within 20 or 30 minutes of your transplant facility, but over a bridge. So you're still going to have to relocate. Um, and so that kind of lit a fire. My light bulb went off, and I was like, we could do something about that. And so that was how Heartfelt Help Foundation was founded. Is we threw together a little fundraiser in my backyard in 2019, and raised enough money for that one patient to go forward and get relisted at his correct medical number for transplant and pay for all of his housing. We were able to and have some money left over for the next one. So in 2020, when everything shut down, we started actually the process towards getting our own nonprofit certification. So we are
yeah,
a official nonprofit now, and are raising money. We've ushered about 5 patients through our program now. We help them find the right housing for them. We
yeah,
help them pay for the housing that they can't afford. We mentor them along the path so
that's
that they have
brilliant.
someone they can talk to that's kind of been there and done that and
Yeah,
had all the complications. Sometimes I'm worried that if I tell my story to them that it'll terrify them because I had so many complications post transplant. But what I've realized is that you tell your story and you say, I had all those complications and I'm doing a 5K every day, and
yeah, that's it.
I'm getting out and hiking 11 miles, and I'm getting out and doing all of these things. You can too. You can overcome all of this,
Yeah,
and you can do all this too. And we've got 5 pre-transplant patients that need our help that we're raising funds to assist down the way and towards that end. In October, we're having our first in-person, please no more resurgence of anything,
yeah,
in-person fundraiser in October, and at a local brewery, and we're going to have bands. It's going to be a raffle prize. It's going to be amazing. We've got wonderful plans for it, and hopefully no resurgences of anything will shut it down. And we're very excited for the future of what we can do and the changes that we can make to make transplant, at least, I mean, you've got enough to worry about just with the medical
definitely.
stuff. And to take the worry about what this is going to do to your finances out of the picture is a huge gift.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm like almost welling up a bit because it's so nice to see. Like must happen a lot in America, and I've spoken to other people that have had to rely on donations for their transplant, and it's just so nice to see people sort of sticking together and looking out for one another and realizing that that time was tough for me, it's going to be tough for other people. It's really, really, really nice.
Yeah, it's well, and it's, if there's anything I've learned, and I think you have too, I mean, that's how you and I connected, is that the transplant community internationally is just, we are a tight-knit little group
Yeah.
of people who just kind of cheer each other on in whatever
Yeah.
we're doing. And I think it's amazing. And to introduce people that are coming into it, terrified because it just sounds so scary.
Yeah.
And I mean, and objectively, it is pretty scary. But to welcome people in and say, here's this group of people who are going to cheer you on, who are young, who are older, who are, somewhere in the middle,
All demographics. Yeah.
and all colors, and all types of people, and we are here to cheer you on. This, we're gonna cheer you on through this whole process. And I mean, that's kind of what we're here to do, and that's the legacy that we want to leave, is to just be each other's cheerleaders as we go through this and give back any way we can. And everybody has their own thing that they're doing. You're doing what you're doing, and you're doing it so well. I am just super impressed by what you're doing. And Brooke, you've met Brooke.
Yeah,
She's
love
doing
Brooke.
what she does so well. And there's so many people. Eliza, who's in your people do what they do so well. And this is kind of the niche that I fit into, is just kind of figuring out how to give back and solve problems. Yeah. And if I can solve problems in my little area, then maybe we can expand it and solve problems in bigger areas. Although right now I'm happy solving problems in my own little corner of the world. But if we can solve problems and make sure that no organ transplant recipient has to worry about how they're going to pay for anything post-transplant, so they can focus on recovery, focus on their family, and kind of rebuilding and figuring out what their niche is to give back. That's fantastic. I feel like that's the legacy that my donor and I can leave together.
Yeah, it's very commendable. It's very good. And like you say, I mean, you can have a bit of fun while you're doing it, putting on events and
we're gonna have a blast. We're gonna do a 5K in the run up, and there's nothing that I try to do with this foundation that doesn't feel fun to me. We've been offered different things to do, and they don't feel authentic and they don't feel fun, so we don't do them. Even if it could make us some financial gain for the foundation and gain some donations, if they don't feel fun, we're not going to do them.
Yeah.
So
I'll put a link up to below this as well, to your webpage and everything, so people can check it out. And if anyone wants to chuck your donation, they can.
Oh, we would love that. We will take that. Although I will tell you that soon we are going to have a T-shirt, and the 5K will be virtual that we're doing, and we can do it from anywhere. And a local artist is designing us a T-shirt. It's going to be super cool. So.
Well, keep me in contact for that, because I'll join in, definitely.
Oh, yay, for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great fun. Now I can run 5K.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, it's great. And you are also an ambassador for Lifebulb. Is that how it's said?
Yes, Lifebulb.
Yes. But it's spelled Lyfebulb.
Yes, it is. They have a segment called Transplant Life, also spelled with a Y. That is a great community of transplant patients, all kinds of transplant patients from around the world. And there is also a place where you can ask questions, you can get support, you will find your cheerleaders who will cheer you on with whatever you're doing. They're heavily involved in social media, and they just introduce you to people who are part of the transplant community. And Lifebulb as a whole, as a bigger whole, is part of the chronic illness community. And what they're doing, I think, is genius. It's bringing together a community who understands each other, because I think that whatever your chronic illness is, whether it's transplant or whatever, I think we all have kind of a deeper understanding of each other because we're all doing something every day that is that pertains to our illness, and whether it's taking meds every 12 hours like we do, or having to regulate what you do to deal with a constant migraine or something like that. We all have a kind of a deeper understanding of each other, and it's great to have a community that A, understands, and B, cheers on the little victories.
Yeah, I think, like you say, bringing people together is, from doing these chats, I've spoke to people that are into baking, and there's a transplant group that are sort of all into baking, and then there's like the kidney boys that I spoke to, they do Lyrics for Life. Have you heard of that?
No.
So it's
that sounds fun.
I'm pretty sure it's called Lyrics for Life, and it's like kind of the X Factor singing competition thing, but it's for transplant patients. So you can make up a song or you can sing covers, and they go along a bit like the transplant games, but for singing. And, so
I love it.
There's that group of people. So if you've had your transplant and you're into singing, there's that group of people. And like you say, if you're into sports, there's the sports, and there is all these different sort of groups that you find within the transplant community. So it is really nice.
Yeah, it was fun. That was actually the best thing about the transplant games being virtual this year, is I got to do my part virtually, which was super fun. I can check that off my box too.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see all these people just kind of coming together and being each other's cheerleaders.
Yeah, it's really good. And ours was cancelled this year, our transplant games, but hopefully for next year. Yeah.
But you didn't have a virtual?
No.
Like they didn't do anything virtually? Yeah, they did all of ours virtually.
Yeah, not as far as I know. I mean, they never put anything online that I saw. So yeah.
Next year.
Next year, yeah, next year, and I would have had plenty of time to get fit and ready for it, so it would be good.
Perfect.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
Oh gosh, that was super fun.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when I come to America, it would be great to meet up. And like I say, I'll take part in your 5K charity run, definitely.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I will. I will keep you in the loop, and we will have our sign up. Actually, our sign up is live now, but we don't have the verbiage yet. So, you can sign up, but you really don't know what you're signing up for yet. But it will be, it will be super fun. We're hoping people will post lots of pictures. It's called Heartfelt Fun and Run because the whole point of this is to have some fun.
Yeah.
And so we're plugging along and looking forward to just having a blast as we start raising money to help heart transplant patients and hopefully every solid organ transplant patient. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely amazing work. And like I say, I think it's so nice to see people sticking together.
It's what it's all about.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. I'll let you get on with your day today or now.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
I will do. You have a good morning. It's early for you still, isn't it?
It is. It's 10:30.
Yeah, you got the whole day ahead. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye.